G'day guys, back again, another Sunday morning. How is everyone? Quite active, I can see. God, I suspect Jared is cooking dinner. Yes. Oh, T1, off to the farmer's market. Well. Hope you're getting some good meat. Oops. T2. Oh, for fuck's sake. Always rubbing it in. Some chicken wings. See what happens, bird brain? You know, she gets all of the chicken wings, she'll be gnawing you away. You know, so you've only got yourself to blame. Yeah, I do. I've got some coffee. Actually, I'm out of raw milk. Yeah, bit of a fuck up this week in actually accessing it, which is a bit annoying. So I'm going right after this down, and hopefully they're still open because they sort of vary their times on the weekends. They do their stock sort of thing, so they stay a bit open after the farmers market in Hobart. But then again, sometimes I've gone right after here and they close, and then I have to go back on Monday because I missed out. Saturday they closed, and I wasn't able to get there in time on Friday because got caught up with too many other bloody things. So, and I had only one glass of yesterday, so that was my last glass of raw milk. So pretty much today I'm dry, down to the coffee and cream and water. That's it. So more Agent Smith. Yes. Got to keep your eye on those New Zealanders, those Kiwis. One thinks the other one's an agent. Sir Blinkers to you. Somebody with a nice comment, you know. Oh, see, that's why I get that extra sleep, you know. My beauty sleep, being late. I haven't even looked at Bart said, "Oh, look at that," but he doesn't realise at 9:30 to 10:30 there's the Greek news on. I'm always watching the Greek news, so I haven't seen Bart's thing. But I did go right to the beginning to see what study it was, and it looks shit. So I'm not surprised. So that will be interesting. But I did get a chance to download it quickly while I was watching the Greek news, but I haven't actually looked at the rat line that they were using, because that's really important, what sort of rat they use and what susceptibilities it have to ROS or cancer. Because they never tell you that sometimes. Sometimes they don't even tell you what rat you literally have to call the magazine or the publication to try and actually get the information. You know, and if it's the damn thing susceptible, well, obviously it's going to, you know, and they go, oh, we need to use these because, you know, we can't wait for 2 or 3 years to wait and get a result. We need to get a result quickly so we can maintain our tenure. We can publish or perish, you know, all this sort of crap. And I go, well, you know, tells me nothing. You know, get a proper rat that's healthy, you know, a wild rat, and I suspect it won't die from cancer in basically 1 week. You know, it's just crap. God, it drives me up the wall, these studies. Just nonsense on nonsense. But anyway, I'll check it out later and see what sort of nonsense Bart came up with. Well, some cats do. Shaking and hiding under the table. Wonderful. I suspect that's related to the storms. and honest, Put down that ice cream. Yeah, it is morning in Tasmania. It's 10:36 currently. And as I pointed out, I was watching the Greek news, which is at 9:30 to 10:30 on Sundays. Is that clean enough for you? Oops, oops, oops. Yeah, we have a festival, the Greek festival, the Astia festival, as it's called, every March. Nah, this is an aberration, Luke. It's not real. I'm glad you're in a humorous mood, bird brain. Fucking hell it is. I was out walking yesterday with a mate of mine. Then we went back and had a barbecue with a couple of steaks, and yeah, it was initially when we were on our long walk. It was sort of on the chilly side. Then it sort of eased off because we were through this sort of area. The pathway is just a lot of trees are on both sides, so you don't get a lot of wind. But once we got right down out of that area and back into sort of one of the main streets, and I was in shorts and t-shirt shorts, and I had I didn't have my wind cheater because I was actually, both my wind cheaters were basically in the wash, so I couldn't use those. So I had like a raincoat type thing, but it's thin and you can still get sort of the cold coming through, and you go, ugh. Keep on walking, warm up, so yeah. I expect you to do your duties, T1. That is a direct order from T2000. So, do we have any interesting quality yogurt that I would recommend? Where are you located, HD? That's the thing. If you're located in Australia, it's not. Look, probably there's a couple of yogurts out there that are sort of all okay. It's in specialty shops. You'll get some organic, good quality type yogurts, but there's not much in that way. You could actually make your own. My dad sometimes does, and I have as well. And we sort of make goat's yogurt, which is really nice, because the goat's yogurt, this sort of shit that they make in Australia is just crap. It's so loose. It's supposed to be very firm and enjoyable in that regard. So not this sort of watery crap. People just, yeah, it's just... Yes. I mean, you're in the States. No idea what sort of products there. You'd have to chat with somebody in the carnivore community in the States that may know where you can source the best sort of stuff. So good luck with it. If I do find out something and you're on next week, I'll mention it. But off the top of my head, yeah, about products, I'd have to look at them. I have to really sort of assess them to know whether are they good, are they not, what is the source of the milk. So what are my thoughts on buffalo raw milk, Harry? Good, not a problem, it's fine. I've never tried it. No idea what it tastes like, but I would say it would be fairly good. Yeah, yeah. Look, Dad used to make both cheese and yogurt, and used to put it in and string it up to sort of drain the water out. Then would put it in a pot, cover it, refrigerate it, and the cheese would stay out. So we used to do both cheese and yogurts at fairly the same time. So there's traditional ways of doing it, much better, and much nicer. Those traditional ways, better quality product at the end. Yeah, and they tend to be. That's right, Fipnado. They tend to be more creamy and way better in that regard. You like drinking yogurt? Look, I like to sort of spoon it, and traditionally yogurt is made more thicker. Like Greek yogurt is a sort of a thick yogurt, and I prefer that sort of thick sort of yogurt where you can just get in with a spoon and spoon it out in that regard. So that's me, so. People with their preferences. Okay, Harry, any thoughts on Saladino's CGM experiment and sudden use of, so his honey thing? Yeah, I'm puzzled as well. First of all, it's fructose, so it's not the best carbohydrate that you'd want. I mean, honey's good for, like, if you've got like a throat infection and you want to use it, or you've got an infection on your hand or a cut or whatever, and you want to put it on for those sort of purposes. It's really good in those regards. Also, if you want to put it into a tea or something like that for when you're a bit mucusy or whatever, for stuff like that, fine. But to consume massive amounts, because I think he said 100 grams, up to 100 grams or something like that, and I'm going, what the fuck? That's way excessively. And I'm hearing some garbage out there that are supposedly, if you're doing something like really strict carnivore, your sugar levels go up. And as I've pointed out, I said, well, first of all, these aren't clinical trials or controlled trials. I don't know whether those people are cheating, whether those people are in a toxic environment, because we know stress can raise glucose. Certain pathogens in the environment can raise glucose. There's a number of things that can raise glucose. Intensive exercise can raise glucose. So there's a lot of factors there. And unless you've got some control and know exactly what's at play, when you've got these other people that have been 10 or more years on a carnivore diet and exhibit none of this sort of, none of these issues. So, yeah, I'm surprised, because if you're somebody that believes in the science, you should be basically quite strict in saying, well, what's the noise level? What's the potential confounders? And unless you can actually address those sort of questions, then extrapolating from very poor data or information is a very dangerous thing to do. Let me put it that way. So, because most studies show when you eliminate or lower sugar, and especially fructose is the worst. It's the most glycating. As I said, it's 4.7 times more glycating than glucose. So how can someone say that fructose is a good idea is beyond me. So no idea. Yeah. Hopefully Bart gets him on and actually has a bit of a chat about these things, because it just seems really weird. I'll leave it at that, because the reason why I made this comment is because I did check out what he was basically saying, and because somebody else brought it to my attention, so I went actually and checked his videos to see what he was saying. So I was a bit concerned with the sort of language that was being used. So yeah, and an N of 1 with all the other confounding possible reasons that I mentioned earlier. Yeah, not a good thing to do. Can you explain how citric acid combined with zinc will make zinc less effective? It's just basically because it's got a positive charge, it tends to basically interfere, because the ionophore that basically opens up that receptor, because it's remember zinc has a positive charge, so citric acid sort of interferes with that process. So that is the issue. And I mean, a lot of, there are other minerals in the body that have got a negative charge and others that have got a positive charge and other things. So they can interact in adversely. So that's what the exact mechanism, I don't know, but it's based on studies, and and even the study that actually looked at it didn't really explain the mechanism, because I don't think they truly they've observed it, but they don't truly understand it in some depth in that regard. So yeah, there's speculation, but I'm not going to go into the speculation because that's wrong. That's not science. Is Jared? G'day, mate.
Hello everybody.
How's the steak?
I haven't eaten it yet. I'm gonna stick around the stream I'll give you, I got 90 minutes or so, and then I gotta go eat.
Sounds good.
Oh, I got some milk though.
Oh, you're rubbing it in, aren't you?
No,
I'm out of bloody milk. That's the thing. I just had my last milk last night. So
I could rub it in on my face, put it in my skin. It's pretty good.
Now let's move down. Let's see what else we've got. So I find slippery elm, good digestive flares for digestive flares in intestines. Your thoughts on the longish term use? Don't know enough about it. I know people that have used it, and I used it years ago. But the problem is a lot of the studies are very piss poor. They're very associational.
Slippery elm. I've not heard of that. What is it?
It's some sort of, it's derived from a plant. It's, I can't even remember whether it's from the bark or whether it's from other parts. But yeah, it's one of those things that some people say. But I've found that once you fix your stomach, and you've got good nutrition in your body, and you don't have a lot of inflammatory stuff coming in to assault your intestine, usually most things go away, because you've got meat that, like tallow, half of it's basically monounsaturated fat, and the other part is saturated fat. There's very little PUFA, and so as a consequence, a lot of those actually upregulate DAO, which helps with that sort of gut permeability issue and all that. So if you're really, these sort of herbal remedies come into vogue when you're assaulting your body, and as a consequence of assaulting your body, some of these sort of stuff tend to basically reduce the inflammation, but how much? It's usually through a hormetic effect. And so I've argued against hormesis in the issue. Too much hormesis can be a problem in itself. So, I mean, I haven't really seen any good studies or any good information. If anybody's got any really solid mechanistic or randomized control studies to really show good good statistical strength of slippery elm, yep, I'll look at it. But I haven't come across anything that's really hits the mark for me. Yep, some people like it. Maybe he is. I really don't know, Richard. Maybe he is. Yeah, it's sort of weird why he's doing it. I don't know, you know. So yeah, with eating mainly cheese, dairy, and meat lead to bone demineralization because of imbalances, phosphorus and calcium. Nah. It's all that myth came from the belief that you become more acidic, and because of that, you basically need to use bone. You need to use calcium from the bones and all that to pretty much buffer. But the reality is, we've got our kidneys that excrete it, and we've got basically our lungs that breathe it out. So it's a non-issue. So that's old hat. It's pseudo crap, and it's been going around for years, and it's been debunked completely and utterly. The physiology just doesn't work like that. So yeah, it's crap. Don't worry about it.
Pseudo hyperparathyroidism. Sorry, I just wanted to say that. It looked fun.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. There's too much junk out there. It's like the study that Bart showed today. I mean, I haven't seen it because I was watching the Greek news. I didn't have a chance to see it, but I quickly just went to the beginning to see what study he was talking about, and just really scanned quickly. But I tried to go down to the bottom to see whether I could see, but I couldn't actually. I didn't have enough time. But anyway, I'll look at it later and may comment next week on it if I remember. But I need to find out what rat line it is as well, because some rats actually are genetically predisposed to high ROS levels and high cancer levels. So, you know, is it the way the rat was manufactured, or, you know, it's not comparing, you know, real rats in nature, a natural rat, to some sort of made up mouse in a lab that's used for all these experiments. Oh, we can't wait for 2 years to see the results. We need to accelerate the results. Well, by making the animal, even the controls end up getting the disease. So what does that tell you? Is it, you know, if you're eliminating the detoxification pathways, the capacity for the body, for that rat to basically respond and deal with those assaults, so it's not telling me anything. It's just poor science, unfortunately. So yeah, it drives me up the wall.
I'm personally going to be moving to the top of a cell tower for 72-hour intervals to cure cancer. I think that's what the study said you could do.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. It does say that. It actually, it's a perfect cancer preventative. Forget about chemo, guys. Give up chemo. Give up keto. Mm-hmm. Irrelevant. You know, glue yourself to a cell tower if you get cancer. So, yeah, see that sort of nonsense it's just, that's the sort of crackpottery and nonsense we have in science today, that these academics are more interested in getting basically their, you know, T2 had to make a comment, in getting pretty much their name on in the publication, get their sort of their friends in academia to say, look, I've published, you know, publish or perish, you know. Get the university, which is in Seoul, the Korean university, you know. That's why I like a lot about Japanese science. Japanese scientists are more ethical, far more ethical than many other scientists I found in other parts of the world. That's why I used that Japanese science last time. You know, and it's the same thing even when they've done their studies, you know, like they did studies years ago and they realized high fructose corn syrup was shit. So they sold it to the Americans, the patent. Do you know what I mean? because they realise that, we're not going to use it on our people. This is shit.
Yep.
But we'll profit from it because those cunts don't care about their population. They'll use it to profiteer, and that's what they did. It's the same thing with with statins. They realise, well, they have an anti-inflammatory effect. It's not really anything else. And then they go, well, if we combine it with coenzyme Q10, which is mandatory in Japan to combine it, you're not going to get a lot of the deleterious effects and get some anti-inflammatory effect benefit, which I still think is you can still get from better foods and better other things. But then again, that's the duty of care, stuff like that. They still have those issues within their own medical system over there. But at least they're basically trying to mitigate some of the side effects of these things. They just don't say, they put you on and say goodbye and see you in a month's time for another 5-minute consultation, and who gives a shit what it's doing to you. So at least they have slightly better ethics, their medicos. I'm not saying they're perfect, but at least their academics and scientists are much better in pointing all these things out and forcing the medical establishment over there, which is also profit motive driven like the American, Australian, or anything else. At least they force them to basically mitigate some of the side effects and stuff like that of some of the medications, where in some other parts of the world we don't see that, unfortunately. What are the cognitive improvements that you'll have experienced since going carnivore? I'll let Jared.
For me, I definitely notice better mental clarity, better memory, better mood would be the big ones.
Me too, pretty much. Much calmer.
Yeah, there was some level of improvement doing keto with those things. I did that for about 18 months before I did carnivore. And then I just noticed a substantial improvement on those again with going carnivore. Yeah, the calmness is a big one, I would say. Yeah.
That's precisely it. That's what I've sort of found, and there's a lot of others in the carnivore community that have found similar things, similar results. You just have to take a look at the Petersons.
Yep.
Jordan Peterson, especially with his severe sort of mental sort of related issues, how beneficial it's been for him. He's tried a lot of things. Even keto didn't provide the same level of success that the carnivore diet did. So that's pretty much a ringing endorsement for the carnivore diet in terms of cognitive improvement and also better mental clarity and stability.
Yep.
I don't suffer from any of that sort of stuff. Mine is a cardiovascular related sort of issue that came into my life, became part of my life from a sad diet and all that. So I don't have any experience in those sort of things. So I can't really comment from personal experience. All I can say is that I noticed that from being on a low carb, keto, carnivore diets, I felt much calmer, much better clarity, less addiction problems, which is another thing. Much easier also to give up things as well.
I can see that, except for my milk.
Yeah, obviously we can't give up that. But I've heard many stories of people giving up smoking, giving up drinking, giving up a lot of things with much easier. I mean, that's an endorsement that you're lowering the inflammation, you're lowering those addictive behaviors, and it seems to have a benefit. Now, with weight loss, it varies. Some people actually put on a bit of weight. Some people don't. Some people remain weight stable. It varies for a lot of people in the early parts. Like keto seems to, you lose weight because it's very catabolic as a diet. You lose weight very rapidly from the beginning. When you start, most people, unless they're doing too many, fat bombs and stuff like that. But with a carnivore diet, it can vary, and it can take a bit longer for people to adjust and all that. So, in that regard, I mean, usually I would recommend people consider a bit of fasting and sort of a keto carnivore approach, rather than which means that you sort of have to up slightly the fat both from your body and from your exogenous, and lower slightly the protein level, but not too much. You know, you don't want to go too low. You want to still remain within the 20 to 25 range. So for women, 20, for men, 25, if they're trying to lose weight. And it's a bit like, you know, with the discussion that recently has been on gluconeogenesis and stuff like that. But I've still got question marks over it, to be honest. Like Bart, I do believe that most of it is basically because the body will naturally, the most gluconeogenic sort of substrate that the body will use will be lactate. So if you're eating a whole lot of carbohydrates, you will take in lactate, you will produce lactate, and you'll recycle that lactate back into glucose. Your body will. And as a consequence, you'll also, I mean, they gave them carbohydrates as well. But the small amount, I actually put a comment, because I put a devil's advocate comment to see whether Bart would bite, but he didn't. He just ignored it. That was, you know, just a bit me being a bit, you know, mischievous, because I'm a bit on the fence on some of this sort of stuff as well. And then, you know, Jack got in the conversation. He goes, well, you've said all this, and then it's like you're contradicting yourself. No, I'm trying to allude us. That was not directed to you. I said it was directed to Bart, and then I sort of explained my reasoning and thinking. I said that small amount could be coming from alanine. Alanine is the most gluconeogenic amino acid of all. It's just basically like gluconeogenic on steroids. Eggs tend to be much higher in alanine compared to many other type of foods. So they tend to have this more gluconeogenic effect. So that's the reason why I threw that in, because they used 4 eggs from the study. That's what they said. So that was quite interesting for me, and I was going, you know, maybe most of the other aminos are demand driven, and maybe alanine is the only one that tends to have this gluconeogenic effect. So I remember there was a study on dogs, and even though insulin was flat, so, you know, can't be hormonal, glucagon jumped up quite considerably, and they only infused alanine. In the other one, they infused alanine and glucose, and insulin dropped, glucagon collapsed, insulin went up, and basically gluconeogenesis, you know, also had a certain milder effect. But then when you used alanine directly in there this is with dogs, you know, not humans, you know, it showed quite a bit of glucose production and glucagon spiking at that point of glucose production with alanine. So glucagon sort of responded. So it could be a sort of a hormonal. So it may mean that alanine sort of can drive gluconeogenesis in a sense by its interaction with glucagon. But I don't really know, because we haven't really got really good studies to prove anything, you know. And obviously the other 2 aminos that don't actually have anything to do with gluconeogenesis is leucine and what's the other one? Lysine is the other one. They don't, you know, because they're so important. Lysine is very important, critical. So you can't actually use it for gluconeogenesis purposes. And leucine is very much required, again, for muscle protein synthesis, all these sort of things. So you can't basically utilize that as glucose. So the body doesn't use those too. So that's, you know, that's my sort of devil's advocate. My sort of thing is basically alanine having this supply role where all the other aminos are demand driven, and there is this sort of paradox of alanine. I'm just putting it out there as a question. I don't know. You know, so because that study showed something, and maybe that effect was due to the glucose that was there. If you take away the glucose and just insert the eggs and nothing else, maybe you don't get that effect. we don't know, because we look at like fat adapted sort of ketogenic type diets, and we don't get that effect from what is being reported by Volek and Finney in terms of these people that that basically the glycerol backbone of triglycerides is used for gluconeogenesis purposes, some lactate, but not protein. So but it's still, there's, in combination with glucose, does alanine behave differently than in other states? I don't know. So that small amount percentage could be, because I looked at the amount in eggs of alanine, and it sort of represents that amount, a similar amount. So I'm going, I know from the dog studies and some other studies. So I'm going, yeah, I'm speculating pretty much. But it's a nice hypothesis to throw out there, and let the pigeons fight over it. I suppose when you are on a plant-based diet, you end up trying all sorts of witchcraft and sorcery to remedy your gut misery. Yeah, that's true.
Plant-based diet.
They're all comedians on this channel. You should know that.
I assume that's intended to be a phonetic accent a la Klaus Schmidt. Plant-based.
That's it. Yeah, look, nutmeg can be a bit, in that regard, it can be.
What tastes like nutmeg?
I think it may be in regards to the slippery elm, but I don't know. I've never tasted, so I don't.
Slippery elm food, hot milk.
Yeah, that it gives it that sort of flavour, but yeah. Oops, overshot. Damn. Get back. Where are we? Yep. T2, no anxiety as well, which is good. That's what we want to see.
Yeah, I won't say I have no anxiety, but it's much better managed.
Yep. Look, if you've got digestive issues, sometimes they can help, especially if you've got like a sluggish gallbladder, things like that. So, as a transition, if you're coming off a bad diet, so. Yep, all anecdotal, mate. All anecdotal. Yep. Yeah. I thought it was a bark. I just couldn't remember exactly. So, yes, it was used in the Revolutionary War to keep soldiers from starving to death. Okay, so I wasn't aware of that. Thank you for telling me. So it does have some benefits. Good. I should probably learn more about it then. So it basically works on bacteria infections in the gut. Okay, so probably tries to go after the gram-negative ones, the sort of the pathogenic types. Fair enough, possibly. I don't know. I'll have to look into it. Yes, I'd say vegan food is more like battery acid.
That's why I drink it. It fuels me up like battery acid.
Exactly. That's it. Your stomach has our stomachs are scavenger carnivore stomachs, which is, but usually they vary between 1.5, and if you don't have a lot of animal foods, they can go up to 3.5. So the reality is our stomachs, if you look at all the literature and studies, they usually say it's 1.5. They don't even mention. But if you're consuming a lot of plants, very little sort of no animal foods and stuff like that, you can end up, but you can end up with a very low pH, a high pH. And that high pH will basically mean that if you've got H. pylori in your gut, that will grow. So you'll end up with ulcers. If you basically have other bacteria that end up overgrowth, you'll end up with SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. You'll have all these little fun critters out there really giving you a hard time. So that's what a long-term, the majority of people that come from a vegan diet, they just got absolute wrecked guts with all sorts of issues. And sometimes they've got gallbladder issues because their gallbladder is so sluggish, it's never seen fat in its life. So it just basically is just accumulated and solidified. So it hasn't been used. The problem is when you use then fat, you can actually aggravate it. So it's not the fault of that. And sometimes you can also cause yourself, like my father caused himself, pancreatitis. So the actual the gallstones came out and sort of lodged into the duct that goes into comes out where all the enzymes come out from the pancreas, and literally created so much inflammation and so much pain for him, and also gave him pancreatitis as a consequence of backing up all that sort of the pancreas. He was in hospital for a couple of weeks, but once
pancreatitis is very serious.
Yeah, I know. But, once that sort of cleared out, he was fine. So, thank the fuck with it. He went through a lot of pain.
Yeah.
It literally ripped through him. This was last year. And I said to him, see what all those bloody veggies did for you? They didn't do much, did they? And he goes, So, yes, he's on a much more meat-heavy diet nowadays.
Yeah, one interesting thing about the human stomach acid being so low, as low as 1 or 1.5, is that that's the same stomach pH as a scavenger in nature, which very likely means that very likely accounts for some of the tenacity of humans to survive in extreme circumstances.
Exactly. Dr. Sebi, that's the guy that actually kicked the bucket some time ago. Yeah, another
4 or 5 years ago, I think.
Yeah, another idiot. Yeah, look, they got this all. People say, "Oh, you're urinating." If you're on a carnivore diet, you're urinating basically a whole lot of acid. And I said, that's what the body's supposed to be. Get rid of the acid through urination, or basically using carbon dioxide to get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
So this is how we don't basically run down our calcium stores. Okay, they're used for other biological functions. You really have to. It's only when you get into a cancer sort of state you may use it. Your bones end up getting used in this way. And not only that, the other thing that actually happens in a cancer state is also the pH of your urine goes up. It becomes more alkaline. So basically the exact reverse happens. So in a normal state, you should have your body excreting rather than excreting the wrong stuff. So that tells you something, that all this is just nonsense. People have looked at this sort of in a narrow reductionist way and come up with all sorts of pointless stuff. And I suspect that's the only part one. Yes, it was probably pointless.
The only physiologically alkalizing mechanism that people can do that I'm aware of is breathing techniques, and that effect only lasts for like 15 to 30 seconds.
Precisely.
Very short.
Or using salt in your mouth and all that, and basically increasing the pH so it becomes a bit less acidic. Because the mouth needs to be less acidic.
Mm-hmm.
The stomach needs to be more acidic. So there are different parts of the body that need to have different pHs. That's normal physiology. Things only get out of whack when you have some disease state. So the body can regulate and maintain everything really well. It doesn't need all these crazy things or gargling down. And especially most of the high alkaline type drinks and stuff like that, they are very high in deuterium, even higher than tap water. So you're basically really putting yourself at great risk. Now, I suspect that is in relation to the EMF nonsense. Yep. It is pointless, but it does actually help those poor academics get some recognition and better tenure. That's about it. But it doesn't help the rest of us. It's completely pointless. And I'm going to be asking for them to put a big fucking tower here next time. If I come down with cancer, I'm going to tell them to wrap the house with towers.
Just get a blanket and climb to the top of the nearest cell tower.
Exactly. Just sleep there.
Set a timer for 72-hour intervals.
Yep. That's it. Exactly. I've found my solution. Cell towers as an anti-cancer therapy. Mm-hmm. So died from pneumonia while in police custody in Honduras. Okay. Laundered thousands of dollars. Oh, such an ethical vegan guru. All these fucking gurus are all ethical people. They just find gullible people to rip off. That's all they are. Yeah, pretty much.
He sold tons of supplements, right? Really overpriced supplements.
Oh God, I mean, most of the look.
And then he was laundering money with it. Apparently.
Yeah. Unless you need for therapeutic purposes, like you're trying to clear out cardiovascular calcification, and you need MK4. You've got brie. You've got basically things like liver, which is very cheap, which is high in MK4. You've got eggs, which is high in MK4, and all the other organ meats are pretty much. So why are you supplementing? You don't really need supplements for most things. Supplements are there to be taken for a certain period of time. As I always say to people, I usually put so many months for this, so many months for that, so many different things to basically get a deficiency under control. Mm-hmm. That's all it is. It's not a lifetime. Your diet should be covering all that. If you're eating properly. If you're doing a lot of cheats and stuff like that, well, you're kidding me. No wonder he had so much money to launder through Honduras.
Mm-hmm. I wonder where the income he was trying to make legitimate was coming from.
Yes, exactly.
Make it look legitimate, I should say.
Okay. So he knew the game was up. Yes, unfortunately, there's still a lot of his believers out there that still haven't realised that. He realised it and actually accepted, pleaded guilty, and his followers out there are still conning themselves. God,
it still comes up once in a while.
Yeah,
people don't understand what homeostasis means.
Yes, pretty much. Next time, bang. Cocktails and shrimps. Some people have the good life, it seems.
That sounds good.
Yes, another success story. You sure it's not the nanomotors, T2? The upgrade that we did to you? No? Are you being honest?
Has he been cybernetically enhanced?
Well, I think we did that last time, didn't we? We upgraded him to a T2.
I'm not sure, did we?
Yes, I think we did. What are my thoughts on Bottarga? I've got no idea what it is. Have you ever heard of this?
Yeah, Bottarga is salt-cured fish roe.
Ah, okay. As fish roe, salted fish roe.
Yeah, so you don't have It's not
Okay.
packaged the same way as like canned fish oil
Okay.
would be, so you don't have the same risks for the liner and for oxidation, I suppose, because it's
Yep.
been cured in salt.
Yeah, I would say a
I
good
don't really
idea.
know that much specifically about it. I've tried it. It's pretty good. It's very strong tasting, very strong.
Very salty.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
traditionally used in a lot of Italian
And
dishes
Greek. And
for,
Greek.
yeah,
Greek
right.
as well.
For
I did.
and
I
it
didn't
was
know
just
the
being
English.
created like Parmesan on a
I,
pasta dish or something.
exactly. I didn't know the Greek sort of word for it. I know the
Right.
Greek word, but I didn't know the sort of. So yeah.
But yeah,
Okay.
it's you can't eat very much of it at a time. I find it's
Yep.
extremely salty.
Yep. It is. It is. Yeah. Oh, look. Even some feta cheeses on some of the Greek islands, they really make them. Oh God, salty. Like Limnos, their cheese tends to be really salty. Their
Yeah,
brine, sort of.
if you don't trust that you have a taste threshold for salt, try Bottarga because you will not be able to eat very much of it. It's like it starts like burning or tasting metallic almost. It's so
Okay.
salty.
That's salty. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Oh, look, look. My thoughts are, that if it's an animal product, like, because fish roe of any, is really healthy, that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the salt level, some people are more, can manage that better than others. So that's a personal preference at that point. Let's try and find a lot of comments here. A lot of comments. Trying to find another question. Always got to stir the pot a bit, mate. Got to stir the pot, excite the natives. So if you already have cancer, can gluconeogenesis even remotely to cancer by feeding it? Not really. No. I mean, your body still needs a certain amount of sugar. Your red blood cells definitely. That's all they use. So yeah, you're not going to go to zero. If you go to zero, you're dead, basically. So the body will, in terms of gluconeogenesis, we're all more talking about whether it's demand driven or whether supply driven. Me and Bart believe it's primarily demand driven, but I'm throwing out sort of the cat amongst the pigeons, so to speak, the alanine cat, that is, amongst the pigeons, to see whether people bite or not and how they react. Because there could be in certain states, like when you're on a carbohydrate diet, alanine could be more gluconeogenic without much demand being there, potentially. I don't know the activity levels, because Bart actually mentioned a bit about the activity of these people going to that place and all that before they got tested. So there's a lot of questions in terms of that study in regards to it's not in a clinical sort of, it's free living, and these people are coming back from home. How many hours did they basically fast? Really, people tend to, unless they're controlled, you don't really know. You have to go on faith, and sometimes people do lie, or people have done the wrong thing and they go, oh shit, I better hide it because I'm going to get into trouble. So they just say, oh yeah, I complied, and that's not the case, and you may end up with spurious results, which then may create all these sort of questions. So that's so yeah. What I was talking about is part of the glucose metabolism will create some lactate. That's what I was basically talking about. And that lactate We're not talking about pathological sort of acidosis type results from from unhealthy states in the body.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about now lactate that just is a normal part of when you have a certain amount of energy. Part of it will end up as lactate, and part of it will end up as pyruvate. And both can be recycled back to glucose. So that's all we're talking about, that it may be the amount of circulating lactate, because you get a lot of lactate coming out of burning sugar. It's just one of those things. That's why it's and even a lot of reactive oxygen species as well from burning sugar. It's just the nature of the beast, that fuel source. But the body can recycle it, and it's only when you're in an unhealthy state, these things may get out of whack. But in a normal, healthy humans, which what these people would be, they would create some lactate, and that would be recycled back into glucose. And that's what we're talking, that's what I mentioned in my comment on parts. If you go and check the comment about the lactate part, that it could be basically providing that additional energy. But mine then was, well, why are we getting this small amount then? So if we've got the lactate, because in gluconeogenesis, the body will always prioritize the lactate over everything else. So lactate comes first, because it wants to get it out of the system, and it will recycle it. Then glycerol will come after. So then you'll use glycerol. And then after that, at a very extreme, once you get to, a sort of a starvation sort of state, then the body will start catabolizing its own tissue. But it won't do that. And this is the whole thing, because we know there is protein sparing that takes place. We know that, the other thing that I didn't actually mention is, which I just realized now, and I've actually mentioned it before, and I don't know why I didn't actually make that comment. Because this is this problem. When you get into reductionist sort of stuff, you end up sometimes behaving in a reductionist way yourself. I find, and this is the risk that we all suffer when people in academia and people that are looking at this sort of stuff, because sometimes we narrow our focus and we miss certain things. But I remember basically when Cahill back in 60s and 70s, when he was doing a lot of his research on people that he was starving them, and remember I mentioned last time that he basically, on the brain one that I did, talking about infusing insulin to lower glucose even lower, at about how much the brain actually, a fatty acid actually uses. There are two things that I didn't actually that I remembered from that experiment. There was a bit of protein in that early stages of his experiments, when he was doing these long type fasts, where in that early stage you got a bit of gluconeogenesis from protein, a small amount in that transition stage. And this experiment was only done over a certain amount of hours. Could it be basically just that transition issue, that you actually had to go to the actual research lab, you used most of your lactate and glucose and stuff like that. You used most of your lactate, so your energy levels were much lower. And then they gave you that meal, and the sort of difference in energy requirements, because you get these sort of crossover as you transition. Maybe it was that transition as well, because in that transition you get a bit of gluconeogenesis, a bit of extra energy coming from protein, and then it drops off. It pops up a bit and then drops off in all those studies on fasting. So maybe it was that and nothing else, and it's a red herring, that study. I said there's probably a rat somewhere in here in the study. But I didn't, I don't have time to look at every sort of thing, but just thinking about it now, I just realized, oh God, maybe I'm basically on my own red herring of alanine, so yeah. But, we need to think about these things because we can all fall into traps. And that's the thing. So I don't know enough about the study. I haven't looked at it sufficiently. I just scanned really quickly through it, looked at the amounts and stuff like that, and just sort of blew through one of my hypotheses, another one of those nasty cats into the ring amongst the pigeons just to elicit a sort of reaction. But maybe I shouldn't have done that. Maybe that was wrong for me to do that, and I should go back to the study, compare it with the Cahill study, and work out whether it's this sort of transition issue that it's at play, no different than anything else. So if they had allowed these people much longer and then actually tested them, they probably may have not got this result, especially if they didn't put the glucose in. So yeah, it can be very confusing, these sort of things, because there are so many possibilities. It says never fry in oils. Oils are death.
Yeah, they were talking about French fries, people getting thrown by French fries, and
yeah, if you use lard.
As deviations go, if you were to have good quality potatoes and do it in lard at a lowish temperature, so it's not smoking, you could do a lot worse.
Exactly, and not even in olive oil. You don't want to use olive oil. Olive oil, compared to lard, has something like 4 times the aldehydes.
Right.
So yeah, you don't want to be frying in olive oil. If you want to put olive oil as a dressing on some plants because you want to have some plants, fair enough. But I would not use olive oil for cooking. Really at low temp. Even my father that cooked many years with olive oil, it was always at very low temperatures over long periods of time. That's how he did it. So yeah, nah, definitely not. Sure, I would go ape shit on them. Scratch myself. Yes. What's this about chocolate? Sure. What about ice cream or chocolate bars?
That'll be plenty to make me feel off.
Ian. Say no more. The ice cream part I liked. But yeah, I'm on the jelly and cream still. So I made a batch last night of jelly and cream. So that'll be nice for afternoon thing.
Everyone was wondering where you were during Bart's stream earlier, and they were
I was
suggesting that maybe you were having your gelatin and cream.
No, they thought I was having ice cream for breakfast. I have had ice cream for breakfast in the past. I know. Yeah, a mate of mine turned up and he goes, "You're having ice cream for breakfast?" Yeah, the whole tub. And he goes, "For fuck's sake!" I said, "Yeah, why not?" So yeah, I do crazy things like that. Yes. Sure. Or it's fiber and not spiking your insulin. Or fiber won't spike your insulin. But some of the substrates, depending, can have certain sugar effects. Sometimes, see, when you, even from the short chain fatty acids that you get, acetate, for instance, like from animal foods, you will not get those sort of more gluconeogenic type aminos or short chain fatty acids. Like acetate can be converted back to glucose. So you will get more of that type of short chain fatty acid from fiber. So if the body's desperate, it may, and the insulin is too high and it can't tap into glycerol, it may go to converting the short chain fatty acid. So you even end up with even less short chain fatty acid in your system for your colonocytes. So it explains a lot why people's colons go to shit even though they're eating so much plants, because they're not getting the benefits in that regard. So there's a lot of things there, but unfortunately we don't have the studies, so we can only basically infer, and that's all we can do about things like that. Harry, pellet dumping, foamy urine. What's the relation with ascorbic acid and citric acid? Well, ascorbic acid, if you have too much, will turn into oxalate, and that oxalate will also deplete you of sulfur in the body, which is very important. So, and citric acid should deal with that in that regard.
Yeah, I've dealt with a fair bit of oxalate dumping, and citric acid helps.
Yeah, so I've had lovely sessions as well. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
But you could use it. You could either use citric acid. I know Bart uses citric acid. I've used both citric acid in the past. If I didn't have access to citric acid, I just use lemons.
Yeah, the lemons might actually be better in terms of the risks involved. With citric acid, you need to make sure that you're measuring it, and you need to make sure to drink it in an adequate amount of water.
Precisely.
And not too often, because it's absolutely possible to over-acidify your gut with it.
Exactly.
But like a half a teaspoon and 8 ounces of water a couple of times a day is definitely perfectly safe in my opinion.
Yeah, I primarily used lemon juice. So in that regard, and Dad's got a lemon tree anyway, so I get lemons from him, and I actually still, even now that I do carnivore, I like to put lemon juice on my steaks. So
it may also be
you can take my card and you can shove it up. It may
also be advisable to dose the citric acids only a couple of times a day for the sake of your teeth. You don't want to be just sipping on that all day long.
Yeah. No, you don't. And if you put it on food, that's another way of doing it.
Yep.
I tend to, after have a salt sort of, and then just wash my or gargle my mouth and sort of and try to basically increase the pH with salt. So I usually do that after, if I basically had a steak with lemon juice on. I'm not always doing that, but occasionally I do like it, especially with beef. I actually prefer it with sometimes I don't like it. I don't put it on on chicken, and also I don't put it on lamb, goat, but I do put it on pork, fish, and beef. So
I like lemon on fish, especially.
Yeah. So that those are sort of my sort of choices. I don't like it on chicken. It just, the taste just doesn't really work for me. So it depends in that regard. Now let's just try and it jumped. Wonderful. Sorry, lost a few questions. So, what's this? To go through 6 months of physical therapy for my hips, inflammation, had bad, couldn't walk upstairs. Yeah, can be quite bad if you're quite inflamed. Have you considered proteolytic enzymes as well for removing scar tissue and stuff like that? Actually, I did have. Let me just.
Yeah, I have the hips where inflammation expresses pretty readily if I eat anything that's off diet, or some of my oxalate dumping symptoms as well, which is very acute pain, specifically in my lower back and hip, that just was very persistent for quite a while, even with dietary changes, even with fasting. But it did eventually subside.
Yeah, pretty much me as well. I don't have any oxalate dumping anymore. It's gone. Thank the fuck for that. I no longer have to have those issues or worry about oxalates anymore.
Yeah, but, yes, I've been out of the woods for a little while with it.
Yeah, precisely. I won't show the email because it's private email from somebody, but they've got this person's got his health issues, so I've been helping him out. But the funny thing is, he's been doing also MK4 and found that his spider veins were going away. And I said, that doesn't surprise me, because MK4 is so good for your skin, so it's good for elasticity, good for a lot of things in your skin. So higher doses will have these beneficial effects on your skin as well, which is a good thing. He asked me about proteolytic enzymes, and I basically did tell him to get this one, which I got for Dad. I've ordered for Dad, to be more precise. And I'll just share this. Disregard. I don't go for. Yep, that's come up. Good. I don't go for they do have a higher dose one, but I go for this one, and that's a sort of profile. Oops. So that's good for people that have, if they've got like a lot of mucus and stuff like that in that regard. So that can be very helpful for mucus. This is catalase, which is good for things like hydrogen peroxide. So if people have got hydrogen peroxide and stuff like that issues, this is sort of a blend that covers a lot of different things around and tissue and stuff like that. So it's different things. And this one here is the reason I got it. I actually got a supplement just with this, and that was a couple of years back, and that was primarily because what it does is also helps with the decalcification. It's part of that protocol that I've been talking about doing about ages, which I haven't done on cardiovascular. Sorry. But, this does actually clean out the arteries. So it's from silkworms, and it basically can go in there and actually clean out a lot of this like scar tissue and stuff like that, which is really good. Again, for joints, back, people have scar tissue in very different areas. So this is pretty good. You can get it in higher doses, but I tend to not really want to get it in too high doses because there are some studies out there that say that certain people with certain genetics, it can have some level of side effects. So it's best to go for this sort of medium type dose, for a longer period of time rather than going high like we would with MK4 as an example. So you've got to be careful. The other thing that I disagree completely is the recommendations. The way they recommend this is just shit. I can't believe that a supplement manufacturer would put this, maybe because they don't want it to work as well, so you buy more. But basically, you should never 1 hour before. It should be at least 2 hours. At least 2 hours. So, that's wrong. And the other thing, 2 hours after a meal, I mean, some meals can take up to 3 to 4 hours to process, to digest. I mean, what sort of nonsense is that? It should be, I usually say to people, at a minimum, 3.5 hours. 5 would even be better, because most of that's gone. It's got into the chylomicrons. It's slowly being dissipated in the system as chylomicrons every 10 minutes. And then so you've got on the other side of your gut lining, you've got all these chylomicrons parked there, and you get every 10 minutes, you get some of them released, and they go around the body, and then the remnant goes through the liver. Anyway, just for people's general knowledge. But then the rest of the stuff needs to get out of the small intestine into the colon and out of the way, and then you can have your proteolytic type enzyme goes in there, gets absorbed. It doesn't get it doesn't get potentially denatured and affected by stomach acid. I tend to not actually have it even after a meal. That's how anal I am about it.
So you take it only on an empty stomach several hours before?
Yeah, I will have it on a very early in the morning, because I usually fast, and I usually break my fast at 11 o'clock. And I'll have one this is what I used to do anyway, later in the evening before going to bed. So it can actually work at night on my body as the body repairing and all that. Give it extra enzymatic support to do the repairs. Because at the end of the day, the body's actually trying to repair at night. So give it the extra enzymes. As we age, we decline. Our enzymes that actually, these sort of proteolytic enzymes actually decline with age. So they can't clear out scar tissue. They can't clear out damage and stuff like that. So these sort of is like adding some assistance to the body as it's losing. It's a bit like the taurine. You lose the capacity to to absorb more protein. So because it's a protein, it's an amino transporter, taurine. So it does a lot of other things, but one of its key functions is that. So you're more susceptible to sarcopenia as you're getting older. So these are sort of the things. I'm trying to basically, by the time in 6 years' time when I get to my 60s, I hope to basically look a bit younger than I look now. That's the plan. Whether that works, it's been going pretty good up until now. But a lot of this sort of stuff. But I'm still trying to improve my biohacking. So in that regard, and if it does work, then maybe I can monetize it. We'll see. No T2. No T2. You need to warp that nanomotor. You're not going to get time travel unless you warp it at really high speeds around a sun, like James Tiberius Kurt did in. I'm trying to remember the movie now. The one they had to go back with it to prevent the Borgs from changing history. Oh God!
I don't know my Star Trek well enough.
I can't remember.
I'm doing well to recognize that it's a Star Trek reference.
That's it. What's Lucas saying? I did heavy manual work with my parents today. That's good. Such a good lad. He helped his parents. You tell him. Don't fear salt. I mean, when you have too little salt, you can't keep the other electrolytes in. Mm-hmm. So the reason why you lose potassium and magnesium isn't because you're not getting enough. It's because you're losing them due to low sodium.
Mm-hmm. And if you just drink a bunch of water, you could just dilute them further.
Precisely. Your body's trying to maintain a certain homeostasis. If you dilute sodium, it has to release more potassium and magnesium to maintain that homeostasis. So you're actually working against your own body. So don't fear. I mean, people were consuming 10 times the sodium in the past. 10 times. Does not raise blood pressure. It does not. It's nonsense. They were consuming 10 times. They didn't have blood pressure issues. It's insulin that drives water retention. Mm-hmm. That's what it is, and high carbohydrate diets. I mean, even Walter showed that with his high sugar diet that I actually spoke to Pim about. Same thing. He showed that he had to take out all these electrolytes out, bar iron, which is provided because he knew the diet was deficient, so supplemented on that and the other vitamins, but no minerals. Why? Because he knew that you have such such retention because of high insulin that if you put these electrolytes in, any sort of electrolyte, we're talking about magnesium, potassium, all these things, you put them in, you will create really a bad state. That's why when you're on a high sugar diet, you should be on a very low electrolyte intake, because you're not releasing anything with that high levels of insulin. This is why fruitarians and all these other crackpots and nuts do low sodium, high fruit diets. And they don't basically pass out from any electrolyte disturbance. The only time it actually happens is when they start introducing other things that actually changes the actual level of insulin. The insulin comes down slightly when some of them go away from a lot of this sugar and actually start introducing like low glycemic vegetables and stuff like that. That's when they start suffering electrolyte issues, because that's when they need more salt because the insulin's coming down. So yeah, crazy stuff out there. There's just too much nonsense, and because people have lost that history, it's.
Ivor Cummins did a really good podcast recently with. They were talking about the history of heart disease. I forget the guest's name, and it was just his most recent podcast. If anyone wants to look it up, they talked about that at length, about hypertension being fundamentally insulin resistant, and also just talking about the history of heart disease and its very inextricable link with processed vegetable oils.
Exactly. Yeah. Was that the I'm trying to think now. What's his name? Kobe or something like that. His surname.
I'll just look it up right now.
Yeah. I can't remember. He's basically an eye doctor, I believe.
Yes, he was talking about macular degeneration. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. I've seen on the Ancestral Health Symposium. I saw him years ago. He did a thing on there, really good, showing quite clearly, and Shanahan as well. She spoke a lot about this sort of stuff in that regard. Got a new one.
It's
thanks, Luke.
Chris Nobby.
That's it.
KNOBBE. I'll link it in the chat here for people.
Yeah, do that. He's really good. He also, like me, got influenced by the Western A. Price Foundation, by people like that, and realized quite clearly, and after reading, Nutritional Degeneration from Western A. Price, a lot of people like himself, like myself and others, realized we've been conned, And Sally Fallon, she did years ago. We're talking about now, it's a decade old. This is back in, I think I saw one of Sally Fallon's first videos. This was about a year after I had my cardiovascular operation. And I saw one of Sally Fallon's that was a year after, or a year and a half. I can't remember now. It's a long time ago. And she went through the sort of showing how seed oils basically created this toxic sort of situation. Because this is before even a lot of refined sugars and stuff like that. We were having these escalations of cancer, macular degeneration, heart disease, strokes. All these things were on the up, and they perfectly align with seed oils. And even other societies that have increased slightly their sugar consumption but no seed oils, they don't show this. So while sugar may drive things like some level of insulin resistance and diabetes and stuff like that, a lot of these other diseases are really driven by seed oils.
Yep.
It's the worst.
Yep.
But when you combine seed oils and sugar, which is what the modern diet is, then it's on steroids. You get everything: CVD, strokes, diabetes. You get the whole package. They're very generous. You get the whole package.
Given the choice between a tablespoon of seed oil and a tablespoon of sugar, I know which one I would choose to eat, because I know which one my body's capable of dealing with.
Exactly. And getting it out of the system without requiring 4 to 6 years to basically eliminate it as stored crap. Right. So we've got a new one from Luke. I have to share this. Oops, let me just turn that off. Great. In that regard, I'm the fastest man alive.
Nicely done, Luke.
Perfect, mate. Perfect. Yes, I'll be cruising out of here. In an hour and a half, I'll be cruising out of here. Basically, milk comes first, even before you guys. I'll be out of here like I'll be grease lightning.
What are you doing, letting yourself run out of milk before stream, Harry?
Look, I know. Fucking hell, yeah. Sort of. Basically, all I've got to entertain myself is oxalate juice.
Oh, I almost made myself a cup of hot oxalate juice before the stream tonight, but I decided I better not.
So that's all I've got. Perfect, mate. Thanks. Appreciate it. Looks good. Can you actually email me the actual image, but with none of the text, so I can actually use it for other things? I like it.
Harry is the Flash.
It's super Harry. No, look, not coconut water. Coconut water is very high in deuterium. That's where the actual fruit itself deposits all its... God.
Think of your nanomotors, Luke.
Exactly.
Get out in the sun and get grounded tomorrow.
Precisely. Exactly. That's the best solution. These young blokes, they've got all this mitochondria, rich level of dense mitochondria, and they just waste it away like that. And here's us.
Oh, you know what they say? Rich levels of dense mitochondria are wasted on the young.
Exactly. Precisely. Give me some. I need it. An old fart like me and Grandpa there, we need it. What are you doing wasting it on fruit and coconut water? God almighty. Don't forget to spank yourself. God, if I had Shell close by, I'd send her around to spank you.
I think she would. She's in Ohio, right? Yeah, she was trying to court me over for weed and whiskey the other night.
Yes.
If the border weren't closed, we'd have to talk, Shell.
Yes, especially, yes, she was bearing quite a few gifts in terms of the alcoholic variety.
Well, I mean, she was speaking my language, talking about weed like that. But...
Oh, that as well, yes. That stuff. The smoking variety.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's try and... try and find some actual questions. There's shitloads of comments. And if I've missed something, put it back up again. So, because sometimes, me, I go on my little rants. Yep, that's the best thing you can do. Keep it out of your home and never go anywhere near it.
I guess...
Tracy, bacon and ice cream. What a combo. You were going to say?
Well, yeah, just for streamlining finding questions and such, if you wanted to, you could ask people to type something like Harry at the start of a question, and then you can just Control F, find it on the StreamYard.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah. If it's not a comment and it's put my name in front, and then it allows me to sort of go through them much quicker. I didn't think of that. Thanks. Yeah. Salute here.
The comments, the chat seems to be degenerating. Someone asked
Yeah,
Shell how much she
yes.
charges for spankings, and she said she takes Visa.
Nice one. Nice one. There it is. I warn you, at your own risk. She can do discounts. Don't worry, Ian. She can do discounts.
You can pay in installments.
Or in installments. That's it. Oh, here we go. Is it common after 5 months of very little pooping to suddenly be a regular pooper? God, that's an interesting one. That's a very smelly one. I think it varies depending on what people are eating. Are you doing a pure type like carnivore diet? If you're basically really, the only thing I can think of, okay, you're doing a steak only diet. And because you're doing a steak only diet, I'm sort of contemplating existence. So give me a sec as I'm mulling through this in my head. You're doing I would say you're doing, and your body is taking a lot of that nutrition, leaving very little. So you're getting very little poop as a consequence. And so what would happen is, as your body doesn't require as much, it goes, well, I've taken enough nutrition. My body is quite, nutrient fine. I don't have a lot of repair to do because I'm not inflamed. So I don't need to transcript as many enzymes. So I don't need as much protein. So I will give a bit more away to the colon. Right. And so, end up a bit more there. The bacteria then will ferment that. They will bind with more bacteria in there as well, because when it comes out, it does come with more bacteria as well in. So that will create a bit of volume as well. Yep. The extra bacteria. And so then you will have that sort of effect, I could say. So that may be the sort of reason why you suddenly become more regular in size and stuff like that. But then again, you may have introduced certain other foods that may have also affected, because some foods, like especially dairy, will create bigger volume. And I can attest to that. When I'm basically just meat, my poop is much smaller. When I'm basically eating quite a bit of dairy, my poop becomes bigger. So that's me, but then other people may have other experiences. Do not know. And Tracy's saying there that steak, eggs, okay, little, yeah. Oh, you were going to say, go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, if you haven't changed what you're eating in that time, if you've just been eating consistently the same things and you've noticed that change in your stool, I would, I'm wondering if you're still eating intuitively, if you're stopping when you're no longer hungry, or if you're just eating an amount of food that you think that you're used to eating. As Harry was saying, as your body uses more nutrition and requires less of it, your appetite, your meal size may decrease for what you actually need, depending on physical activity as well, I suppose.
I thought I saw somebody out of the window. That nothing. It's just next door neighbour that I was. Anyway, just back to. So no changes in 5 months. Yeah, probably. Probably what I said in the first part, you're taking all that nutrition in, and now you're not taking as much. potentially, and you're giving more to the colon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, could be that. Yeah, I can't think of anything else. I know that when I sort of change some sort of eating habits of certain types of animal foods, my poop can sometimes get delayed by 2 days, or I can have 2 bowel movements in a day. One in the morning and one in the evening. Usually the evening is a smaller one, but it's still, so, and it depends on the transit time of certain types of foods. Even animal foods, they have different transit times. No different than vegetable foods have different transit times.
Yep. So
that could be an issue as well. So there's a lot of variation. If it's size isn't important. I know for certain things it is, but not for poops. So don't go, oh, it's too damn small. Oh, that damn poop is too damn small.
Nobody in this community needs to be suffering from poop envy.
Exactly. Leave that to the vegans. They love their big poops. They literally salivate over them. They look, like those apes that go, I can actually eat that again. They probably have thoughts like that. Yes, we don't want carnivores having those sort of thoughts.
Yeah, they heard Saffron meowing in the background. She was howling downstairs.
So where's Butter? Hiding?
Where's Butter? No, she's
usually Butter's there causing some mischief.
Yeah, she's just chilling, doing her own thing, I guess. She was here at the start of the stream.
So basically your poop isn't getting sufficient sleep. Is that what you're telling me? Okay, so basically its circadian rhythms are out of whack. So this is the first documented proof of poop that has circadian rhythm problems.
So if you, I mean, this is easier said than done, I recognize, but if you start eating at the same time every day and start going to bed and getting up at the same time every day, I would find it very unusual if your poop time didn't also regulate itself.
It does a bit. Mine does. Mine's certain hours, that is a bit of truth in that. But I was just being a bit of facetious as well.
Of course.
It's a fun time, it's not supposed to be 100% serious. I leave that to Grandpa. I sort of have to, somebody's got to do the humor. It's me and Butter that do the humor. We
established that earlier, yes.
Somebody needs to keep me serious.
I take things too seriously. Well, I mean, at my age.
Yeah, exactly. We understand. We sympathize. Oops. Nice when you overshoot. Okay, I think I may be undernourished when I started. Yep. So, yeah, that's possibly the reason. That's sort of speculation on my side, remember, but it's the more plausible. Okay. Okay, so another person confirming. Yeah, mine.
We're still on the poop size, are we?
Yeah, we're still on the shit. Yeah. Those poor tormented souls, vegan souls.
Shadow figures in the corner of the eyes. Yep.
Poop delay, more poop stuff. God, you can't get your minds out of the shit, out of the gutter, can you?
Yeah, they're right in the sewer, actually.
Well, that's even further. Subterranean, they've got subterranean in their sort of T1
The
and
depravity
T2.
knows no bounds.
Yes, exactly. What is T1 and T2 doing out there? You're not basically dealing with this. Show some backbone, T1 and T2.
Who's T1?
You've got to. Who else? Take off your blinkers.
Oh, okay.
And our dear friend Bird Brain is T2. Designated by me as champions of the Harry universe. More ludicrous stuff on my part. Well, I have to delude myself now and then. It's part of the whole thing. I get up, I look at the mirror and delude myself and go, "Oh, you look great." And then, because I got the other thing, the other little, like those little devils, you look great. The other one, you look like shit. Move on. So yeah, I have those moments as well.
Well, it's good to keep your own ego in check.
You gotta. As one would say, it never pays the bills.
Well, I mean, when you're as handsome as we are, you can't let it go to your head.
Oh, that's it. That's exactly right. Yes, I've been saying that to myself, and saying, well, a bit of humility, mate. A bit of humility. I look at the mirror and I go, a bit of humility, you wanker, and sort of it pulls me back and it sort of helps me in that regard. A bit of more seriousness. Too much comedy is not good, So yes, I occasionally give myself a hard time. Now, behave. So what is pickle juice? Sodium, potassium salt.
Like I said, it would depend on the pickles, I think. There probably are brands of pickles that would be all right for if you needed some brine to try to experiment with. It's an easy probiotic drink, something like pickle juice or sauerkraut juice without the fiber in it.
Exactly.
But you have to get a brand that's actually fermented is the thing. If you're just buying like Vlasic pickles or something and they're made with sugar and vinegar,
exactly,
it's not going to do you any good.
No.
But there are brands like there's one here they sell here called Bubbies, Bubbies, and the ingredients are just salt, cucumber, cucumbers. So it's
exactly
cultured.
Yeah,
so you're not going to have any of those emulsifiers or your polysorbate 80 and things that people are listing as problems in pickle juice. So I've thought about doing sauerkraut juice for myself in the past when I was having some issues, but they subsided without that intervention being necessary.
Yeah, a friend of mine, he gets I introduced him in my earlier keto days and low carb days to a French variety, which was really nice and all that. But Dad years ago used to make a lot of pickled, especially cucumbers, like all the little small ones. Used to select those and deliberately cut them off earlier so he could pickle them.
Yep.
So it'd allow the rest to grow into larger ones. So they would take all the juices to grow, and he would actually just pickle those for winter.
Yeah, homemade pickles are yummy. If I was going to try any kind of a plant food or veggie, that would probably be one of the places I would start personally. For fermented foods like that.
Exactly.
Specifically, really, really good homemade pickles have a really nice carbonation to them. It's a really, really fine carbonation like champagne. Really small bubble.
Exactly. I like I've sort of grown up in a tradition where Dad did onions, because onions, they used to always put garlic in them, like pieces of cloves of garlic. He still grows garlic, so that's one of the things. He eats raw garlic. Yeah, he still does that. Yeah, I know. He's got a few weird habits, but anyway. And it's but it gives it. But combining these sort of things really gives a great flavour in that regard.
Ian Lev was saying OxyContin is great for hangovers.
I think I've heard that before as well. I've never tried it.
I mean, that wouldn't be a reason that I would take opiates personally.
No. The best thing to basically, certain things happen to you when you actually take a lot of alcohol in. Your choline levels go. Your choline levels. Fucking hell, the shit stuff and all that. My brain's sort of stuck there. What was I going to say? Yeah. Okay. I'll come back to. Come down to this before I miss it. Yep. I'll get into that in a sec. You need to put the colon in front. So in order to be able to be searchable, just not the name. But anyway, what was I basically saying? I lost my track.
You should be able to search it just from just Harry if you want to.
Okay. And what was I saying before? I'm trying to think now. I've completely confused myself.
You were touching on OxyContin.
That's it.
Hangover.
Yeah, like with hangovers, the best thing what you do is, one, you dehydrate, so you need a bit of fluids in there. The other thing is you go through shitloads of B vitamins. So if you're going to go out, if you want to get a hangover, don't have any B vitamins. That will guarantee you'll get an early hangover. If you have too many B vitamins before you go, you won't get much of a hangover. Mm-hmm. So you can actually drink quite a bit without getting a lot of hangover. And then when you get home, if you have some B vitamins, like 2 tablets or those lozenges or whatever, you can basically end up with no hangover the next day. So a bit of water and B vitamins, and you're done. And if you, on the other side, you want to basically export that fat out as well, take it so you don't end up with fatty liver, keep your choline levels up, whether from eggs or take a supplement of choline. And there's Butter. Hello, Butter.
People were asking for Butter. Here she is.
Oh, she looks great.
She's looking out the window. She's very distracted by cars going by. She's part dog. She sort of plays fetch and sleeps in the middle of the floor like a dog would, and comes to her name when she's called.
You've got really strange behaviors.
Yeah, Butter does too.
No, I meant Butter. Oh, you also have. Oh, okay, mate. I didn't realise that. That's good to know. I'm not the only. I'm not the only strange one.
Laugh.
Hey, that's sexy. You know, it's bony and sexy. Yes, exactly. The coconut stuff. Too much. Now back to the question. Okay, 5 carbohydrate sources. My basically carbohydrate sources that I would basically look at would be sort of herbs, spices, but certain spices I would exclude. There are certain spices that are high in oxalate, some are not. So spices usually are one of the spices. Usually it's the seed, it's those sort of parts primarily. The herb is basically the leaves, the flowers, and the stems from memory. I think the flowers are as well, aren't they? Yeah, I think so. So basically it would be herbs and spices. So herbs and spices, there's 2. What else? Another 3 things that wouldn't be as deleterious. It would be basically things like pumpkin, sweet potato, maybe. I'm sort of lukewarm about sweet potato. Pumpkin, definitely. Zucchini, definitely.
Squash.
And well, pumpkin is squash type thing,
I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah. So squash sort of covers both zucchini, pumpkin, and all that. So it would be basically ignore the sweet potato. So it'd be basically herbs, spices, pumpkin, zucchini, and cucumber. There's your 5. I wouldn't touch anything else. And when it comes to cucumber, remove the skin. So it has some lectins. It's not very high, but remove the skin like people traditionally used to do. Take the skin off. For that, obviously you can't have pumpkin with the skin. That's quite tough. You can gnaw at it if you're really desperate, but you don't want to be doing anything like that. So they tend to be low glycemic. They tend to have far less issues like oxalates or anti-nutrients in that regard, especially the herbs. Will if you have them in small amounts, they're fine, and the spices in small amounts. Excessive amounts can be an issue with those too, so I wouldn't have them in excessive. So just have them as a small amount. But the other sources would be pumpkin, zucchini, and also well, actually, lemon juice would be another thing that I'd include there as well. So that's another thing that I would include for flavour. It's it supports us. I mean, you will get some. Your body can produce citric acid, and you can get some citric. You can support the citric cycle, but do you really need to? The body can do a lot of that anyway. But so you'll get a bit of a benefit out of it anyway. So especially if you're dumping oxalates and stuff like that. So yeah. So probably lemons as well. Now with zucchini, you can basically get large zucchinis, cut them in half, get rid of the seeds and take all the insides out, throw them in a bucket, throw in a whole lot of dairy, and create a zucchini pie, which is a sort of a traditional peasant's pie that the Greeks used to make. It's called gluconeogenesis. Let me see if I can find it. And share. Now they call it a pumpkin pie, but it's gluconeogenesis is gluconeogenesis, which is the zucchini, the large zucchinis. Anyway, so we use the word to cover all aspects in that regard. So there it is, zucchini pie, which is that is the proper Greek gluconeogenesis, and all this. What all these other people are saying, who are non-Greeks. At least this is a Greek lady, and she knows her shit in terms of foods. So, is that audio coming through?
No.
Let me just... Yep, I forgot to share audio.
Also known as zucchini and cheese pie. I'm going to take you over the ingredients, and we're going to make this delicious dish Pies are really, really common in Greece, and they're
They
made
definitely
with
are.
pretty much everything. Zucchinis are in season right now, but you can make this any time of the year. I really love zucchini. It's a really mild vegetable, and it's super, super delicious. So what I have
Now,
here
in there's
is
too much
a few
zucchini.
grated zucchinis.
So, in there, my father usually makes it with slightly less. But anyway, because I know that she's not going to put a lot of dairy in there. And this is the problem now. Even a lot of modern Greeks have, they've also, let's say, accepted the BS about you shouldn't have too much saturated fat and stuff like that. And this is another reason why Greeks are sicker than what they used to be in the past. So they've given up on a lot of their traditions that they had back in the 80s and early 90s, unfortunately. And so they tend to make these more vegetable-based rather than dairy-based pies. But anyway, what can one say? So the focus is more, but so you can actually see there.
And I put about 3 tablespoons of olive oil.
They use
The rest is going to go in my phyllo. Mix this up a little more, and then we're going to put it all together.
That's eggs.
A little bit of black pepper, white onion or yellow onion. Say you didn't have scallions. Really, really well with zucchini, as does dill. And I'm using dry dill, but if you have fresh dill growing in your garden,
Dad usually uses fresh dill, and
fresh dill. I'm gonna put
he grows his own.
in here.
There's a cheese, the feta cheese. Now that's nothing. These are different cheeses that she's. We primarily don't use a lot of. We don't see here. She's actually got yellow cheese. We don't use yellow cheese, hard cheeses. It's made from feta cheese, and a lot of like dairy milk and cream you put in the actual mixture. So I'll get Dad's recipe for people that may want it, and I'll so in that regard. But it's sort of an idea of what they use. Phyllo, so she uses the sort of the phyllo variety, the way she does it, and we don't do it like that. We actually put it on a thin tray, so it becomes thin.
Juice is a lot of liquids.
And that's how you're supposed to have it.
Kind of set in the pie. You should not cut this for at least like 15. I'm rushing like crazy to get stuff out on time. So I'm gonna try my best to cut a slice of this.
So the way it's there, the way the spinach pie is there, you can actually see it. If I go back to that,
what would I do if?
See the way that spinach pie is there? That's the sort of size that we usually, the way it's there, that's the sort of size we actually do it even with the gluconeogenesis. So it's not basically thick like that. We do it thick because you put so much dairy. If you can't make it that thick, because there's so much vegetation there, it's end up fucking like some sort of veg bomb. So it's a different style, but this is the problem with modern day thinking and all that. And it's not like traditional trays. We have these thin trays or large trays, which we used to take to common ovens, which the bakers used to have these big wood ovens in the villages in particular. And I remember because I used to help my auntie when we were back in the late 70s, when we were over there staying in the village in the summer, and we would basically go down with these big trays and literally take them to the big ovens, and they'd be oven baked, and boy were they nice compared to something coming out of a modern kitchen. There's no comparison, the flavour in that regard. So yeah, I miss some of that sort of stuff. But those are the sort of less risky, because Greece, they tend to make a lot of from yams and zucchini and stuff like that. They tend to make a lot of pies. That's what a lot of pies are, and they put a lot of dairy. That's how they combine a lot of dairy into the diet, and we consume quite a bit of dairy, as I've shown statistics before. The high milk consumption and a lot of high feta consumption and stuff like that. It's usually through these type of dishes that we do, and they tend to be, these sort of peasant foods tend to be low GI, low glycemic, very low in the sort of oxalates and stuff like that. And traditionally, because flour was expensive, especially in remote villages, especially in the mountainous sort of areas, where people just use the ingredients and just the vegetables and the milk products, they would combine them and actually cook them in the oven like that. And so there would be no phyllo at all. So there'd be very low carbohydrate type food in that regard, traditionally in mountainous regions. Unfortunately, now we live in a modern world where you can access 24/7 all sort of refined carbohydrates, and people basically like to put phyllo, and they don't put a bit of phyllo. As you can see, she packed the phyllo on because it's so cheap. In the past, you had very limited, and in the past it wasn't even this refined crap. It was basically Zea bread, which up until the early part of the 20th century was still being used from antiquity. And that has very low, like it's a tenth of the gluten of modern breads. A completely different type of bread. And that's why I think that, when it comes, and even people didn't consume a lot. My father used to tell me, in the morning, his mother would slice him one slice of bread. She'd put, in the old days, they used to put lard on top. But later, when olive oil, after the war, became available, it was easier to put olive oil on top and then put a piece of feta cheese on top. And that would be breakfast. So, and it wasn't feta cheese it was from their goats. So it wasn't sheep, because they had goats in that area. Anyway, let's get back into it. Some of these people have got really some strange habits. Well, that's all I can say. I get up and the first thing I can think of doing is snorting something. Wonderful.
I'll stick to caffeine as my stimulant of choice.
Me too. It's my only indiscretion in that regard.
I was just being cheeky. They specifically said carb sources minus raw milk, so I said raw milk. That's my favorite carb source. You didn't ask me.
Luke was asking something. Did that come through, actually? Let me just... Oops. Here it is. So, what's your take on raw versus cooked on the diet? What's your opinion?
He wants your opinion specifically.
Okay,
we were arguing with a raw foodist on Discord.
My opinion is, I usually how did I have my steak yesterday? Rare. I don't have it raw. I have it rare, because I don't know what food handling has actually been involved. That's the only reason.
Yeah.
So even if it's grass-fed and all that, which it is, it's irrelevant, because Tasmania is all grass-fed. That's not the issue. The issue is that basically the food handling is an issue. So I'd rather the outside, the inside fine, the outside, Actually, I went to a mate of mine, and because we had steak after the meal, and he actually did a sauce with mushrooms and gorgonzola cheese and cream, a really nice combination. And mushrooms are sort of what I call, because he asked me, he said, "Is this carnivore? Is this going to be an issue for you?" And I said, "Look, a bit of mushroom, I'm not going to be, a lot of carnivores say no, it isn't, and then at the same time, it's a yeast." And a yeast is more like an animal rather than a plant. So it's a neutral thing somewhere in between. It's a grey area. So I said, we'll play. I'll descend into the grey area, because I did want to taste his sauce. He's been telling me about it for ages. and I hadn't tried it. And I go, oh, okay, fuck it, I'll try it. It's only once in a blue moon, but it was really nice. I could actually say, very nice. This sort of mushroom cheese. And it's got a gorgonzola cheese, which is one of those really nice cheeses as well. I think he's done something also with blue cheese as well, with a really heavy blue cheese that he did once as well. I never tried that, but and it was all just shitloads of cream, because you have to put quite a bit of cream to make up the sauce. And it was a very creamy sauce. It was nice, thick, on top of the steak. And he was very generous. He gave me the biggest steak, which was nice. Because he ended up with his son taking more of the mushrooms and other things. So it was bloody nice as. So, yeah, I did enjoy myself. But, look, I have had raw meat, but I'm not an advocate for raw meat. I actually have cured raw meats because they're safer. They're salted raw meats or smoked raw meats. So if I have my raw meat, sometimes I've had cases where I've had raw meat 3 or 4 times in a week, because it's just fucking convenient. I don't have to cook it. It's more out of laziness than anything else. But then I do also like cooked meat, but not overcooked. So rare. If somebody cooks it medium rare and serves it up to me, I'm not going to say no.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I think that there's a strong argument for the micronutrient content being preserved in raw meat and this sort of thing. And I don't begrudge anybody that eats raw meat and is able to find health that way. If they're able to resolve specific issues that way, I'm sure they're not imagining the benefit. But there are a lot of risks to eating raw food that way, as you pointed out, with food handling, that I find these people tend to sort of gloss over. That they just, it's you need to be careful with it. And I think that a lot of people who are eating a lot of raw meat, certainly if they've properly acidified their stomach, it's less of a risk. For somebody who hasn't done that, it's more of a risk. But I think a lot of them have just been lucky with not
Precisely
getting contaminated food yet. Because a lot of people like to pretend that those risks aren't there.
The argument that I always get from raw fooders, they say, well, if you've got an acidic stomach, where's the issue? They've got a point, but they always forget that through your mouth, there is basically a connection between your oral part of your body with the rest of your body. And so some bacteria can go from your mouth to your heart and other parts. So, it can bypass the stomach.
Mm-hmm.
So the sort of argument that I hear from raw foodists is sort of a mute argument. Yes, it's more to break down the food and reduce this sort of the issues in the stomach and in the intestinal tract and all that. That's a good thing to acidify, have higher levels of acidity from your stomach. But then there's also issues at the oral level where you can get infections. So, people arguing that you can't get infections at the oral level have no idea, because there's plenty of literature out there that shows that. Mm-hmm. So that's where the sort of issue lies. Where with fermented foods, it's a different thing, because fermented basically is done with salt and the lactobacillus, which is salt-loving type bacteria. They propagate and they displace any pathogens in the system, and salt usually kills off a lot of the pathogens. They don't like salt very well. So as a consequence, it's one of the best things to use is salt for that purpose. But beyond that, it's also less of an issue with those fermented foods, with those raw foods that are being cured with salt, because that's the only ones that I will not use any other nitrates or shit like that. Not that I believe in the nitrate theory or stuff like that. I just basically want things to be done the least, crappy stuff being put in there. So that's the only reason. But If it's a poor quality meat, definitely I want nitrates in it. You know, I want it to, you know, because I just don't trust the sort of the source. So in that regard, yes. So it depends, you know. So how would you break the evil carb? Lock yourself up, throw away the key. That'll do it.
Yeah. Just stop eating them.
That's it.
It's not simple. Sorry, it's not easy, but it is simple.
Yes. And that's the thing. Do it by degrees. I've always said to people, if you really struggle with addictions, remove one at a time. Don't go cold turkey. So remove one item for 3 weeks. Remove the next item for 3 weeks. It takes 3 weeks to adapt to a new sort of situation. Maybe even 4 weeks for better results. So you've got that additional week where that transition period, and then next one, and then next one, and then next one, until you've removed practically all the vices out of your carb vices out of your diet. So that would be the sort of easiest way. I don't recommend people go crazy, I have to go crazy. No, do what works for you. Don't overstress your body and your mind, because that can be counterproductive as well. So, yeah. Yep. Nope. No comment. Okay, we'll move on. Do they eat more beef or goat in Greece? Neither. Depends on the region. In the northern parts of Greece, there's more beef. There's just more herds of cattle in that sort of area. So most of our dairy comes from the northern parts of Greece in terms of dairy milk it's all A2. And there's an island to the north east of Greece as well, which is also a very much sort of cow, sort of beef sort of area, region. West coast of Greece has more goats. Some of the islands of the Aegean have goats. Crete has goats and sheep. No, I'm trying to remember now. God. Central Greece has, because they've got a tradition from ancient times where they've got quite a bit of horses, and they do get milk from horses. Some of the locals also consume horse meat. This is below Greek Macedonia in Thessalia. It's a tradition of theirs. Epirus. Epirus is pretty much feta cheese, goats, sheep. The Peloponnese. Peloponnese is a funny place. I know there are parts of the Peloponnese that actually they vary. Some areas have sheep, some areas are goat dominant, some have cattle, but very few have cattle, bar those two other regions that I mentioned earlier, northern and that island. I can't really think of any other sort of in that regard. Goat isn't consumed as much as it used to be, unfortunately. It's actually the best in terms of when it comes to PUFA profile, like how much PUFA is in meat, as an example. Goat would be much closer to an ancestral food. So when you're looking at wild, animals in the wild, like in Africa and other parts of the world where humans existed and hunted those sort of animals, those animals tended to have a much lower PUFA level compared to today's domesticated animals, bar goats. Goats have 0.2 grams per 100 grams, which is 3.5, around about 3.5 ounces. So for every 3.5 ounces or 100 grams, you get 0.2 in a goat. In pigs, beef, in cattle, in all these animals, you get primarily about half a gram, and in so 0.5, and in sheep it's 1.5, and well animal. Chicken is also a bit on the higher side, but I cannot remember the amount for chicken. Let's just try chicken. I just can't remember the amount. Chicken. So 3 grams. So for 100. So basically, the most PUFA. See, have to think about it. How much PUFA did our ancestors have? About 1.5 to about 2 grams of PUFA a day. That's what our primitive ancestors had. Humans in the early part of the 20th century and probably in the past had about 2.5. And when you get over 4 grams of PUFA or more, you basically start getting into health issues if you do that on a daily basis. Because PUFA is for signaling, is for some, for some repair mechanisms like arachidonic acid. Omega-6 is used for repair mechanisms. DHA for some of the signaling pathways of different hormonal systems, plus they are parts of the brain, but they don't actually make up, they shouldn't make up the remainder of the tissue or cells in your body, the membranes. Why? Because they are prone to oxidation and damage. And when you try and burn PUFA, first of all, you can't actually burn DHA, but when you try and burn, for instance, omega-6s, it creates a lot of reactive oxygen species, and it's very poorly burnt as well. So it's very problematic in that regard. And that's just the PUFA itself that you can get from certain food sources, like seeds and other things. We're not talking about in regards to the industrial oils and stuff like that, which are rancid and damaged, and that's just hell on earth type situation. We're just talking about not, your body doesn't need a lot of PUFA, and it didn't really have. So if you let's say you're having 600 grams of, just divide that by 28.3, which is 21, a bit over 21.2 ounces of meat. So that's quite a bit of meat for the day. Okay, for a lot of people. So 6 times 0.2 will give you 1.2. So that's all the PUFA you'll get. Okay, so my great-grandfather lived 100 odd, 107, basically was eating goat, was eating basically dairy. Dairy is quite low as well in terms of PUFA. It's very high in saturated fat. 60% is the highest in saturated fat. So we're not talking about high PUFAs as food. And so you can see chicken becomes a problem very quickly because it's 3 grams of PUFA. So you can have more than 200 grams, 250 grams as a serving, as an example, and that's about nine ounces of chicken, and that will basically put you at the 7.5 grams of PUFA a day. So that's quite a bit. Remember that all the studies show once you get over 4 grams, it doesn't make any difference after that. The level of cancer, the level of all these issues just goes the same. So, and we're consuming things like 20 odd grams of PUFA a day, which is, just way beyond anything that we should be consuming as human beings. When you look at Ancestral and you look at, so goat has got the best profile in terms of if you want to consume a lot of meat, goat is the safest meat to consume. And then beef and pork are the second safest because, lamb is at 1.5. So, if you have, let's say, 200 grams of lamb, and I usually stick to about 170, which is 6 ounces. That will give me basic, that will basically put me at 2.55. So 2.5 grams, which is what people consumed. If you go back, let's say 100 years ago in terms of PUFA. So that amount of, is fine in that regard, but you don't want to consume too much lamb. And with beef, you can go much higher, obviously, in that regard, because it's, it's at basically 600 easy. Bit more, 700, 24 odd ounces. You're probably still in the safe zone, but don't go over 4. Once you go 4 and above, it's an issue. It's just too much PUFA. Your body doesn't need it. So that's really important.
Okay. Harry, I think I've got to go make myself some food and hit the hay.
You do that. I better get through some of these other questions before I blast out of here in about 40 odd minutes and head off for my milk.
Like a flash. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Like a flash. I'll be out of here.
Good. Well, I'll have a glass of milk for you in the meantime.
Thanks, mate. Thanks, mate, for being here today. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me as always.
Yep. Not a problem, mate. Take care.
I'll see you next week.
And regards to the missus and the pussies.
Yeah, Butter's purring on the couch in the room here.
Let's not forget Saffron as well.
Yeah,
the older one.
Saffron's not in such good health right now. I don't think she's long for the world, unfortunately.
Okay. So,
but she's a few days shy of 18 years old, so yes. I can't begrudge her the time that she's given me.
She's had a good running.
Yes.
That's it. Anyway, mate, thanks. See you next week and take care. And go and enjoy your meal.
See you, everybody.
Well, back to me. Feta is nice. Yeah, you tell Bird Brain. Actually, Dad's going to buy me some because I've run out. And he goes, I called him today earlier. I had a bit of a chat with him, and he goes, Have you got any feta cheese? And I go, no. He said, I'll go around and get some for you. So he's going to go and buy me some. Really nice of him. So he gets it from a wholesaler sort of thing, which is good. Makes it easier. Dad, because we had a small business years ago, so he still maintained his wholesale account with a lot of these businesses, which is good. I get the benefit. I'm not complaining. Not at all. Yep, one way of defining it. Since going low carb, Chris says, for a year and now carnivore for a month, I seem to have developed bad peripheral circulation. I eat a fair bit of fat, Should I be worried about something else? It could be electrolytes, potentially. So especially that sort of transition. It's when you mean bad peripheral circulation, that's sort of, look, send me an email with all your circumstances and stuff like that, what you're reading and all that. And that makes it much easier for me to then to give you something which is more useful. Because that shouldn't be happening. I might transition smoothly from low carb to carnivore with not an issue whatsoever. I know people have, but there may be some underlying things that haven't been resolved and just have been exacerbated. So we need to look into them. T1. Yes. Try to do that with something very salty. Could end up with an inflamed nostril. Yes, me too. I have to say I do love blue cheese and stuff like that. Yes, very much. Yes, Jared is a very, very important part of this channel. I really enjoy his company and our general chats that we have. Yep. Yeah, look, I sort of prefer rather than going with that. Why take the risks? I just can't see the value of it. And I do enjoy that sort of combination of cooked and raw. It really is a nice combination, especially when I also, you can make a sauce, a cream sauce, and put it on top and combine it. I mean, some people use butter and just let it melt, but you can actually, I sometimes literally the fluids that remain. So you cook it in a pan, you get some fluids, and I usually put the top on because I just want it to basically cook really quickly on the outside and just get, without overcooking, without getting really dark or anything like that. So, and that releases quite a lot of fluid into the actual. So then you take out the steak, put it on, take the lid off, take the steak out, and then in that throw some cream in there and sort of mix it up with that sort of, and I usually try and get a thicker cream, mix it with that thicker cream, and then create like a source of the juices. So you get all the the potassium, the magnesium, all those minerals that have come out of the actual steak. You combine that in that, and then you put it on top, and it's really nice. So put a bit of salt and pepper, give that extra creamy flavor. So that's how you do it in that way. So try it. Just don't. That will basically, once you do that, you won't want to go just on a bland, regular sort of steak. I mean, you like steaks now and then. I sometimes like steaks barbecued with salt and pepper on both sides, and so give it that really peppery, salty type flavor. But also this non-barbecued, doing it in a pan type approach is really nice as well. And then creating a sauce with cream and all that is really nice on top, I can tell you. People should try it. Yeah, look, there's nothing, try cured meats or smoked meats. And, the other thing you can do is you can cut them really thin, like in thin strips, and try them like that. Some people sort of it's not a jerky, because a jerky is dried out, and so you lose much more nutrition by drying things out. But by making them thin like that, it's a bit like, your salamis and stuff like that, and it's much easier to consume like that for a lot of people, because mentally your body will perceive it more like a salami or something like that. If it's salted and peppered, you will view that raw meat as a sort of like a salami thing. So I usually cut it in thin strips, salt and pepper it in a bowl, mix it all up, and then cut it into small pieces and put it together with cheese and some other stuff, and have it in that way. And your mind actually perceives it in a very different way. So that's another way of sort of getting around, because there is that psychological side of things as well, Yes, he did. He definitely did, Daniel. But he was doing some weird things. One, he wasn't salting, he wasn't smoking, and he was getting stuff from sort of regular sort of supermarkets or stuff like that. So it wasn't, there was potential for food contamination and food handling issues. And so exactly, that can happen as well. So when you cure meats or smoke meats, you eliminate that problem. When you cook them on, like rapid temperature on both sides for a couple of minutes, that's all you need, and it's still raw inside, not an issue. So it's, if you want it to cook a bit more deeper, so you get that red in between, and you get just below the crust a bit of cooking, a bit of meat, like some people prefer it that way. It's more easier to transition to raw meats that way. Then you can actually heat up like a plate and put it on the plate after you've done. So because you don't want to burn it or overcook it on both sides, and then you put it on the plate, and the heat from the plate will continue cooking it slightly. You leave it for a couple of minutes, and then you turn it over to the other side, so it takes a bit on both sides. And that's another way of doing it, where you get a bit of that extra depthness in terms of cooked part of the meat, which makes it easier for people to get used to such meats as well. So you're still getting, it's like a halfway house, Try it. You may like it. Okay. He was a meat inspector for the state of Ohio. And Necro Kitty, my condolences as well. I heard that you had a loss in the family. I hope you're fine. Take care. If you wanna email me and chat, anything. Yep. I'm available. Yeah, exactly. Blue is perfect, and that's basically, you can get like thick steaks. That's the other thing I need to go down on Monday to remind myself, because they're actually this butcher that actually creates these really thick steaks. So I need to go and get some. But anyway, I'm being sidetracked thinking of meat. But that's right, and you can get even one of those, like, what do they call it's like an iron type thing. So you put it on the barbecue, you put the iron on for a while, you take it off, turn it over, put it on the other side, take it off, and that's about it. You've done it. That's blue. And so you've got it on both sides. You've just basically pushed so the heat gets in slightly, so it actually makes sure that everything's killed off. And then you just grab it, and I do the sort of with the forks, and then just do all the rounded part, the edges and all that. That's it, done. There's not much effort there on that. That's the easiest way. That's correct. I suspect that it was in regards to bacteria and stuff like that. Yep. Like viruses and all that, they can, Depends on also your mouth, the state of your mouth as well. That plays a role as well. So it's a bit more complicated in that regard, what your oral health is like. Usually if you're been on a low carb carnivore, low sugar diet, it should be fairly half decent, I would think, unless you've got underlying issues that you've never dealt with properly. So that's a different thing altogether. Yep. Like myself, Richard's sort of into the rare stuff. I mean, look, I have consumed blue, but I do prefer it rare than blue most of the time. But sometimes I will have it, and sometimes I'll have it completely raw, you know. So, and that just takes a bit more effort. That means I have to slice it all thin, then salt and pepper and put it in and literally allow it to basically take in that salt, leave it in the fridge and take in all that salt and basically potentially eliminate any potential pathogens. But the other thing that I do is before I start slicing it and dicing it and all that sort of stuff, I'll put it on a board, and I will pack salt on both sides and rub it in, and I will leave it there. I will just leave it there for 20, 30 minutes. Then I'll come back and then I'll slice it. So, and I've usually made sure my hands are clean and all that sort of stuff. They're all fine. And one other thing that Dad taught me years ago is literally like a little, whether it's a bowl or a bucket or whatever, you put salt water in, you put quite a bit of salt water in, and then you put your hands into that, and pretty much anything that could potentially be pathogenic and all that is dealt with, and then you can do all this raw meat sort of stuff. So that's another trick for people out there that maybe are dealing with a lot of different foods and want to basically prevent cross-contamination and all these sort of issues that can happen. So I think old restaurants used to use salt for the same sort of reasons, but nowadays it's all gloves and all plastic, and and even plastic can get contaminated. It's just I don't know. Anyway, it's up to you the way you want to do it, whether you want to go through the plastic course or you want to basically soak your hands in some sort of brine. It's up to you. Yep, that's right. Got more about cooked meats here. It's goat meat is difficult to find. Even I have difficulties in finding goat's meat. It's like wild meat. Some of the some companies that actually specialize in, like wild venison and stuff like that, they tend to have things like that as well. But it's hard. It's more easier for me sometimes to find like cured goat's meat, but not meat itself. You sort of have to. Well, years ago, Dad had access to a butcher that used to bring goat meat in, but we don't have that anymore. And it's something that I've been meaning to try and find a source in Tasmania. If I do, look, I'll let you guys know if I do. People that are in Tasmania, I may do a bit of a thing looking at goat meat around the world and sort of trying to find sources for different people based on, I know where my subs primarily come from, which parts of the world. So I'll look into that sort of stuff and see whether I can help you guys source some good goat meat. Because of the profile, that's the really good thing is it's got a beautiful fatty acid profile. In terms of PUFA, very low. So it's the safest. You can have quite a bit of goat meat without really worrying at all. Lucky Daniel. I hope that's about the baklava. You know the difference between Greek baklava and Lebanese baklava and Arab baklava, because the original baklava was in the Middle East before the Turks came into the region, and the baklava was sort of, you know, the flat type where you make it into small pieces where you cut them like that. The Turks, they also adopted that from the Arabs initially. We had it much earlier because that whole Middle East, who exactly invented it, I don't know. In the Middle East, somewhere within the Eastern Mediterranean, it emerged. Some people claim that its origins are in Greece. Others claim it's in the Middle East or Lebanon, especially with the Phoenicians, because the Phoenicians, with, you know, the P, not Venetians, Phoenicians, they were in the Eastern Mediterranean, and they sort of moved through. They conquered parts of North Africa, which is and a few other parts, a bit of Sicily as well, part of their what was it, the Carthage Empire, or whatever it's called, and I think that's where it sort of originates. The Turks actually created a different style. They have like a cylindrical style. My father can make it as well. It's a cylindrical style, and you cut it into pieces and you put it, and you just fill it up with honey, and it just permeates honey all the way through. So it's, you know, you can only have one of those things. It's just really so damn sweet. And obviously, T1 said, yuck, no freaking way. Well, you'll upset Paul Saladino. Only another Tassie Salmon question. Do you know if antibiotics are used? They are used sometimes, depending. So it's a mixed bag. Unfortunately, we don't. Sometimes they have to use them from sort of, I won't mention names or anything like that, but it depends, you know. So they're not always used, but they are sometimes used. So that's sort of an issue for some people. Yeah. So I wouldn't actually, if it's farmed, I wouldn't actually consume it raw. Would be my answer, because that's, I think, where you're going to. Because, yeah, that's how I would see it. But generally speaking, it's not a big problem. But yeah, it's look, I don't think it's a massive problem as people make out. But at the same time, I would rather go for the wild stuff if I can get access to it. Yeah, and the other thing is, the reason why I don't consume a lot of salmon, for the simple reason is they just take the skin off. So, and because of the high omega-3 component there, by taking the skin off, they've already taken the astaxanthin away. And I'm going, well, you know, if you take the antioxidant component that I need to refresh those fatty acids, then I have to supplement otherwise to have that fucking salmon. And so that's the other side when it comes to fish. I prefer fish with their skin on and with their astaxanthin intact, so I can use that. Because it's more potent than vitamin E, and vitamin E is again for stabilizing PUFA. It combines in all animal foods again to stabilize PUFA. It's the same thing, astaxanthin, because there's an additional bond where, you know, you can get oxidation on it, because compared to omega-6s, omega-3s are even more unstable, more prone to oxidation. and aldehydes and stuff like that. So you really need to have that astaxanthin there. Yeah, it's something that it's one reason why I argue against skinless fish, pretty much. So, but it's people like it that way. It's just it's a sushi sort of mentality. What can you say? But anyway, it's pointless arguing with people, and fortunately. But yeah, I sort of stick to other fish. I'm not I'll have mackerel, sardines, cod, some of the other crustaceans. Yeah, I'm not big into salmon, I'll be honest. I'll have it now and then if I can get wild caught. But yeah, people make a big fuss about it. I don't give a shit, honestly. In that regard, obviously, it does have more vitamin D than other fish. So as a vitamin D source, it's pretty good. But, you can use supplements for that, or you can use the sun. Or you could fly out in the middle of winter like I used to do a couple of times a year to the tropics. But I can't do it now because the airports are shut. And just getting to the mainland is prohibitive, even when it becomes available. So, yeah, unfortunately. So I've had to succumb to supplements this year, not because I wanted, but because I was forced to. But that's I get part of it from an olive oil, high quality based type. And then I also get some from cod liver, which I have in winter all the time, always. So, but I get a Norwegian cod liver, which is high quality one as well. So less issues. And I've actually even tried this other new one, which I got for Dad. We're investigating it. It's actually quite a potent with some of the, I won't mention a lot about it. I first want to sort of investigate, see how Dad goes with it. And I'll probably come back with some feedback down the track. So that is for another time. Yeah, I actually did have, that is exactly what I had yesterday, porterhouse steak. A nice big, juicy porterhouse steak. That was really enjoyable. I love that. Yeah. Give chicken a miss, honestly. Overrated. I occasionally have chicken, but, and it's more for the drumsticks and the bones, so I can actually gnaw on them to get, because that's what I do. I just sort of gnaw on the actual, it's not the meat that I'm really focused on, because there's not enough meat. And in those drumsticks, you can still have low PUFA if you don't consume too many. And the bones, I usually gnaw at them both ends, because the type of collagen that's in the chicken, is the type 2. The type 2 is good for your gut, and the type 2 is also good for your joints. So the hyaluronic acid. So where all your joints are, things like that, is where hyaluronic acid is, and it's a good it's a good source. So I actually sort of try to get a bit of chicken once a week into me, but I don't consume it heavily, and I don't sit there consuming massive amounts of things like breasts and stuff like that, because I try to get the skins and basically the legs and where the bones are and all that. So I'm more into the bones, trying to get that sort of stuff into me, and minimizing the amount of PUFA coming in. So that's how I do it. Primarily my focus. So yeah. But if you vary with other meats and stuff like that have got lower PUFA, then it's not an issue. And Richard's asking, black pudding best with bacon and eggs, in my opinion. Yeah, it's not too bad that way. And one on kangaroo is low PUFA. I think it is, actually. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. Let me just check. Okay, yep. Yep, 0.2. 0.2, exactly the same as goat. So the polyunsaturated fats are 0.2 grams, exactly the same. And wallaby's the same as well, because I've actually checked wallaby. So, yeah, as I said, goat is the closest to ancestral foods. When we domesticated animals, we increased slightly the PUFA content. So that's so basically, don't fear bacon, don't fear beef, don't fear things like even bison is going to be low. Like I suspect, I don't know exactly, but I suspect it's going to be as low as kangaroo as well. So bison, let's just check bison. Why aren't they breaking it down? They're just having fats, not breaking it down. Yeah, fat and saturated fat, but no, the others. Fatty acids. They're always concerned about the saturated fat, the fucking idiots. Nope. Yes, sort of can't find the breakdown, unfortunately. No, not there. Well, that's ridiculous. No, that's just showing saturated fat, nothing else. See whether this one has the. Why is it not refreshing? Oops. Why'd I lose that screen? It's a really bad. It's just the way they've actually. The PUFA content is about 0.7 from what I can see. So it's. But I could be, and that's 112, so it must be lower. What would be, so 100 divided by 112 times 0.7, so it's about 0.6, so it's just slightly above. Yeah, I don't really know enough about bison, to be honest, so yeah. But most ancestral foods are very low in PUFA. So keep that in mind. Yes, all thanks to Jared. Yep, he's a top bloke. I really enjoy his company. Oops. Yes, exactly. If you can get it, in that regard. And I think I may have missed something. Let me just go back slightly. Let's share this. Hope he's watching. Oops. Oh, God. Unselect. That's it. When you screw up the raw milk contraband and the boss is deciding whether to kill you or not. Where's the gun? You should have had him, pistol holding in one hand, this sort of thing like that. Do I have to do everything, Luke? Nice one, mate. I think he'll appreciate that one. Well, we're getting close to the end. 4 minutes to go. Harry, how did megafauna contribute to our ancestors' diet? What happened during the domestication of animals increased the PUFA? From our information, this is archaeological information, a lot of the animals that we look at have similar ancestral connections. So the modern wild animals haven't really changed that much. There's a couple, but even some of the megafauna actually were outgrowths of existing animals, like like things like the when you look at elephants and mammoths, they have a similar lineage. Things like kangaroos and wallabies, similar lineage. All these sort of, they sort of are connected, and these animals tend to have similar profiles. So even though we don't have a lot of those megafauna anymore, they've been, we can extrapolate from their close relatives what exactly the wild stuff we're talking about now, what exactly their fatty acid profile was, and that's how we work it out. And also what tribal people nowadays, the very few that have remained, they're diminishing rapidly, but from the 60s and 50s and 70s, when we looked at the animals that they were hunting, the diet was very low in PUFA, was much higher in saturated and monounsaturated fats, but very low in PUFA. And that's right through because PUFA is good for signaling purposes, for some structural material in the brain, but it's not to be burnt. It's a very unstable, reactive fatty acid. And when you put too much in there and you don't provide the body with saturated fat, monounsaturated fat for it to burn, it's forced to use that. And that's why it becomes very reactive. If there's only very little there, because it needs it for hormonal signaling, for repair of tissue, like arachidonic acid, and also for some of the structural parts of the brain, you basically need to conserve it. And so the body will conserve it, not burn it. Actually, when it comes to DHA, it will not burn it at all. So it'll either use it or lose it. It will not burn it. DHA, but and also when it comes to omega-6s, they can be burnt, but very poorly, and they do create a lot of reactive oxygen species. So they're very reactive and not a good thing. So, yep, Rich is about to go as well. See you, mate. I'm about, what is it, half a minute away as well. So have a good day in the land of Kiwi. Yes, so pretty much that's the sort of story of it, that when we transitioned, we started feeding them certain foods like grains and stuff like that, and it's the grain content that actually increases the PUFA content of a lot of these animals. And even the ones that are grass fed, that have much better PUFA profile, still, because of the sort of the genetic adaptation and stuff like that, they seem to basically, these genetic shifts and changes seem to have changed slightly the profile even of the grass fed. But generally, the grass fed is much lower in omega-6s compared to those sort of animals. So it's probably slightly, because that level 0.5 is basically standard beef. So which is, so that would, the actual grass fed would be probably about 2 to 2.5. So a much better profile in that regard. And it may even be 3, but more of that will come from omega-3s. So it's not as bad in that regard. So it's less of an issue. So grass-fed, grass-finished, pastured, stuff like that is still important, guys. That will still be an important thing. So anyway, I think we've come to an end. It's 3 hours in. It's 1:30. I got to go, and for what. So look, thanks, guys. I enjoyed it, had fun. We got through quite a bit of information. I hope it's helped you understand a couple of things, and also some of the questions you guys asked, one or two points that I wasn't aware of, certain herbs and a few things like that. I'll look into them out of interest. So if I do get another question along those lines, I'll know a bit more about it. I have, when it comes to all the herbs and spices, I would say with some of them I have a really good understanding of, and with some of them I have a rudimentary level of understanding. So, so bear with me in that. I do want to learn. I know that there's a hormetic effect and some sort of things that some of the herbs help, but like the anti-inflammatory, anti-cancer sort of properties of the effects on sort of tumor necrosis factor by things like turmeric and stuff like that. I'm aware of some of the stuff but there are some of the less popular types, or stuff that people, it may have been popular in the past but not so popular now, that I'm not really aware of as to the same degree. So I'll look into that sort of stuff, and if you do ask me about slippery elm and whatever else, I'll actually look at some of the science, because I have to look at the science. And sometimes when you look at the science, you realize, it could be the placebo effect. These people could be deluding themselves, or it's just junk. There's nothing there. Or there may be something minor for something, it may help here or there, but it may not be as what they claim to be. It does all these other things. And I usually find that usually is the case for most things. Good nutrition is the foundation of a good health, and throwing in a whole lot of plant compounds for hormetic effects and all that doesn't tend to really improve health that much. So, there are other things that are more important: proteolytic enzymes, good diet, maintaining good stomach function. These are the sort of things that will help you long term have good health. It's not going to be all these other fucking supplements that you end up wasting so much money on and get very little benefit or very tiny results, which can be mitigated through other pathways and other methods. Anyway, thanks, guys. I enjoyed today. Take care, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.